Greetings, Starfighters. Welcome to the next episode of Shameless Cashgrab. Our next movie is called Spring Break. It is from 1983. Yes, 83. And, yeah, much like the last set, a lot of 80s movies. Although I took a quick glance at this box yesterday, and we actually have one movie from the 90s and a couple of movies from the 70s on this one. So, hey, a little variety. But yeah, looking at the plot description on the back of the box here, it looks like with Spring Break we're basically going to be getting an inverse of the plot to Hard Bodies. And you remember how I felt about that one. Somehow I doubt this will be an improvement, but, you know, I will at least watch it before I pass judgment.
Okay, so, two things. First of all, I saw the movie. Obviously, this episode would not be up on YouTube if I hadn't. And two, I discovered that I actually can in fact leave the fan in this room on while I'm recording. Thank goodness for Audacity noise removal, because I tell you, that is going to be a big help when I'm making episodes for this show during the summer, because, wow. Some of you may not know, I live near a desert, so you have some idea of how hot it can get during the summer. Anyway, we're here to talk about 1983's Spring Break. Today's plot summary comes to us courtesy of Wikipedia, and I finally found one I've been looking for this entire season, a much more in-depth plot summary. It's a little spoilerific, but I haven't really been trying to avoid spoilers that much this season anyway. Two nerds, Nelson and Adam, are looking forward to their first spring break and book a room at an inexpensive hotel called the Breeze and Seas in Fort Lauderdale. They meet cool guys, Stu and OT from Brooklyn, when the four of them are accidentally booked into the same room. With no other places available in town, they agree to share the room. Amidst the partying, a man named Eddie is trying to shut down the hotel with the aim of then buying it himself. Nelson's stepfather, Ernest, is running for political office. He becomes livid when he learns that Nelson has shirked his assigned campaign duties. He and Nelson's mother go to Florida with the intention of bringing him home. When they arrive in their yacht, Ernest hires Eddie to find his stepson. Nelson, Adam, Stu, and OT become fast friends while drinking, partying, and taking in the local nightlife. OT and Stu have better luck with women than Nelson and Adam, but the younger boys are undeterred. One night, the four guys go to a bar holding a wet t-shirt contest. Nelson meets a girl named Susie and accompanies her back to her hotel. She asks him to get her a soda from the lobby, but when he forgets her room number, the staff throws him out. The next day, Nelson finds Susie and explains what happened to him. He invites her to a party that night, which she accepts. Eddie, lurking nearby, manages to overhear this. Nelson and Susie meet up at the party, but have to leave when Eddie shows up with henchmen employed by Ernest. Nelson and Susie retreat to the beach where they have sex. Eddie finds the couple the next morning and takes Nelson to his stepfather. Nelson is severely scolded and locked up in the yacht. Eddie, having been paid enough by Ernest to buy the Breeze and Seas Hotel, bribes the local building commissioner to shut the place down. After being found and alerted by Susie, OT sneaks onto the yacht and frees Nelson. The four guys, Susie, and a crowd of other spring breakers head to the hotel, where they get into a beer and whipped cream fight with Eddie and his henchmen. Ernest shows up and tries to throw his weight around, but Nelson gets the building inspector to admit he was bribed to shut down the hotel. Nelson's mother decides to divorce Ernest, and he is then arrested by the police. With spring break over and the hotel saved, everyone says goodbye and takes a group photo to remember their adventures. Spring Break is certainly different from the other two movies in this set so far. Despite what I said in the video portion, and despite what the plot description on the back implied, and you may have actually noticed this from the plot summary I just read you, this movie isn't that similar to Hard Bodies plot-wise at all. The back of the DVD implied that it would be. Also, unlike Hard Bodies, it managed to get a small chuckle out of me pretty early on, barely 2 minutes in with the dancing traffic cop. That scene was probably only funny to me, but whatever. Hard Bodies didn't get any real laughs out of me until the last 10 minutes, and Private Resort squandered its potential laughs by not knowing when to end the bits. But Spring Break? I am genuinely surprised that I actually enjoyed this movie. I freely admit I'm grading on a curve here, but I'll get back to that. 14 movies into this little series, and we finally have a teen comedy movie trope we surprisingly hadn't gotten to already. The asshole step-parent. And an asshole step-parent who was running for political office at that, if you remember the plot summary. Can you tell I wrote this script before I found the plot summary? Well, you see, I write the scripts while I'm watching the movies, and I try not to spoil myself, and that's how that kind of thing ends up happening. Anyway, so we're bringing elections into this movie. And shortly after that subplot is introduced, we get real estate shenanigans. That's one we actually have had before, but not in a while. In fact, the last movie we had with real estate shenanigans was The Hearse, which I think was like the 4th or 5th movie of the Strange Things set. Of course, unfortunately, those subplots actually get ignored for a fair chunk of the movie until they collide at about the 36-minute mark, but you know, a classic example of plot contrivance theater, but honestly, I've seen worse. On the further positive side of things, while some sexism is inevitable in these kinds of movies, for the individual viewer, it's really a matter of how much problematic material you can handle and still be able to enjoy the story. Because as I'm sure we all know, there's really no such thing as a perfect movie in any respect. But it is to Spring Break's credit that, unlike the previous 2 movies in the set, we are well past the credits, the character introductions, and the plot setups before we get anything particularly offensive to women. And honestly, the offensive material in this movie, it's more of the inconsiderate than of the malicious. If that makes sense to anybody, you know? Well, immigrants don't get off quite so light in this movie, unfortunately, with the ethnically ambiguous bellhop, and also the drug dealer later in the film, but I'll get to him in a moment. But, you know, I've honestly seen worse examples of racism in film, and in movies that were much more popular than this one. Long Duck Dong, anyone? I'll say this, at least none of the movies in these Mill Creek sets have gone that far. Well, yet anyway, I probably just jinxed myself on that one. In at least one respect, this movie does take a rather surprising swerve for an early 80s comedy, in that we have 4 male characters, all straight cis dudes, who are not at all shy about being naked in each other's presence, and not like in a gym shower setting. Imagine the manosphere freakout if that happened in a movie that came out now. I mean, these guys all share a tiny bathroom in the hotel and at a bar, and even drunk, there isn't so much as a "don't look, bro," or anything like that. Not one of these characters says anything remotely homophobic, or at least not that I noticed. Which, again, for a movie of this era is pretty impressive. So, yeah, I mean, all that's actually fairly progressive by 80s sex comedy standards, and I emphasize the by 80s sex comedy standards so that I don't get dinged too many feminist points over the fact that I just used the word progressive while talking about a movie that has an extended wet t-shirt contest sequence. And on top of that, the progressive thing, not the wet t-shirt contest, when the main protagonist finally meets the obligatory love interest, more than halfway into the movie, that's a little unusual, he finds her playing a video game, Galaga to be precise. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't resist the Avengers reference. But he doesn't, quiz her or question her gamer cred or anything like that. He mostly just watches, and he only offers advice when she's about to lose. So, actually being helpful. You see, Goober Grapers? See? Women playing video games has been a thing for decades. Adam Baldwin lied to you. Where was I? Oh, right. So, in the end, everything happens about as you'd expect for a movie like this. The asshole stepdad gets his comeuppance. The aforementioned beer and whipped cream fight at the beginning of the movie. As he leaves, he gets a bunch of beer dumped on him, and then he's trying to speed to a fundraising event and gets pulled over by the cops. And I mean, he isn't lying when he tells them that he wasn't drinking, that he had that poured on him, But he was also being really snooty, so you can't entirely blame the cops for not believing him. And plus, he's white, so his life was never in any danger. But, he gets his comeuppance, the boy gets the girl, the hotel is saved, yada yada. But, the yada yada kind of sells this movie short. I did not have a terrible time watching this movie at all. Now, I mentioned grading on a curve. I do chalk that up to lowered expectations. I mean, the two movies before this in the set were, in order, shit and shit with an asterisk. But sometimes keeping your expectations tempered is the right way to go into a movie. It certainly worked for Solo: A Star Wars Story, and it worked here. Funnily enough, both movies fail the Bechdel test. But, okay, I will keep one thing spoiler-free for you here, in case you do want to check this out, but there's a scene with an alligator that, thankfully, this being a comedy, it doesn't end as badly as it could have. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I mentioned racism earlier. Unfortunately, you had the aforementioned ethnically ambiguous bellhop, and I mentioned there's a drug dealer. I'm going to get to him in a second. But this movie has what I believe to be the first black character in the movies of this set, and he is not a stereotype of any kind. In 1983, that's not bad. In fact, he works security for the asshole stepdad, who is a Senate candidate, which I think would make him Secret Service, or, oh wait, do you have to have actually won the Senate seat to get Secret Service protection? I think I intended to look that up before recording and then forgot. But I mentioned the drug dealer. It's like from the pot buying sequence in the movie, which honestly could have been shorter. And how racist the character is? Well, I mean, he's racist either way, but it would be less so if the actor was also Hispanic and this wasn't a case of brownface. I don't actually know. I could have looked that up too, but, come to think of it, when have I ever done that much research for this show? Granted, part of that is because the whole deal with Shameless Cashgrab is these are my initial reactions to the movie. But anyway, we are now on to the random thoughts I had while watching this movie that didn't really fit in with the main thrust. And actually, I'm starting to question this segment here. Because I'm thinking maybe I could find ways to talk about some of this stuff sooner. But let's just move on. I will worry about that for the next episode. So, Spring Break is directed by Sean S. Cunningham. Yes, the original Friday the 13th, Sean S. Cunningham. I mean, okay, all things being equal, I'd probably rather watch that movie than this one, but problematic as they can be, I got a soft spot for the 80s slasher fics. So, sort of as a joke in the last episode, I suggested a time to boobs counter. Well, okay, I called it a time to tits counter, but time to boobs does... Actually, no, now that I say it out loud, time to tits works better. It's the alliteration. But, since the last two movies had topless women showing up before the credits were even over, I thought, it's like I should do a time to tits counter on these movies. Ha ha ha. Well, this movie really wrecked that gag. Why? 25 minutes. That is more time than the last two movies combined. More than twice the time of the last two movies combined. I'm actually kind of impressed at the restraint. Less impressive, though, is the movie seeming to buy into the idea that drunk sex could ever be anything but a mess. The only reason I stopped short of calling the sequence I'm referring to rapey is everyone in it is drunk off their ass. Everyone. There nary a sober person within frame. So it's uncomfortable, but it could be worse. I did mention the wet t-shirt contest earlier, and as I was writing it, I couldn't really find a good place to shoehorn in this thing that I'm about to talk about, but it is worth noting that part of the reason the wet t-shirt contest is extended, as I refer to it, It's because it's actually split into two parts. First the women, then the dudes. Yeah, they call that part the wet he-shirt contest. And I think it runs actually about equally as long. Okay, again, I would remind you, this is 1983. Another thought I had, as annoying as the main protagonist, Nelson, could be, I actually did have a lot of sympathy for him in that scene in the movie when he forgot what number the girl was in, the obligatory love interest was in, after he went to the lobby to get the soda, and he got thrown out and all that, and it was mentioned back in the Wikipedia plot summary. And it's like, I've had brain farts like that. I mean, none that cost me a night of passionate sex, mind you, but still. So, final verdict. I'd say, overall, this movie had more genuine laughs than the previous two, and, at least by volume, if nothing else, way less sexist. So, as 80s comedies go, you could do worse. And I don't just mean the previous movies in this set. I'd definitely choose Spring Break over the original Police Academy, or Pretty in Pink, or Porky's. And, oh my god, I swear I didn't even realize until after I said it out loud, I picked 3 movies that started with the letter P. You see, that's how much I love alliteration. I will find a way to do it by accident. Now, granted, it's like, if I could only watch 2 80s comedies in a given night, I'm going to choose Real Genius and Ghostbusters, but if I could do 3, okay, I might still pick something other than Spring Break, but you never know, I might decide, why not? So, 3 movies into this set, and the high bar right now is a movie that's fine. It's just fine. Don't worry, I'm not going to say fine a bunch of times. That's Lindsay Ellis's shtick. And for me personally, at least by my internal and completely arbitrary ranking system, fine is better than okay. At the same time, fine is actually a considerable step up from where we started. Hell, okay is a considerable step up from where we started. So yeah, we have one more movie on this disc, a movie called Love Lines. I'm actually not hopeful with a title like that, but after that, Hard Ticket to Hawaii. You know that I've been looking forward to this one. And we've only got one more movie to go. I am just so jazzed, you guys.